Hello and welcome to Indie Miners. The Smile have released their second album, Wall of Eyes, today. We're reviewing it right now. BJ in Melbourne, good morning first of all. What's your initial take?
Initial take, loved it. Loved the album. Love the Smile. Love what they're doing. I thought that there was a bit of a point of difference between this one and the first one. I think that this one is a little bit more considered, and what I mean by that, I really enjoyed the first one in terms of it felt loose in a lot of ways. They felt that they were sort of trying a lot of stuff and throwing a lot of stuff against the wall. This one here, look, they're sort of similar vibes. You can tell that they're a real collective. This is not a side project that we're talking about. The songs feel a lot more considered, and I think that's probably what happens now. They've got 45 minutes, and it's 8 tracks. There's a lot of longer style tracks with it. Undeniably, it sounds like Smile, which sounds like Radiohead, and that is great for everyone to hear. I think it was very pleasing to hear when they first came out with Bending Hectic in the middle of the year to suggest that the Smile weren't going to just be a one and done type of an entity. They were going to continue on.
Yeah, look, I absolutely love it, mate. It's going to be a 5-star album from me at this early stage of the review. There's lots of tracks which are particular favourites, even though it has only been released today. For me, it's a real soundscape of an album. You feel like you're kind of walking into a museum, and this would be on in the background. And it's, as you mentioned, it's a really considered album. They've taken some time and they've narrowed it down to 8 tracks, 8 quality tracks, which each on their own flows really well from start to finish. And you can definitely tell the shift from Radiohead into this project. Now they are becoming their own entity, which is great to see, because obviously, you know, when you've been in a band for 30 odd years, you might want to either reinvent yourself as a band or start something new, which they've done really well. In terms of tracks which I'm really liking so far, I know it's only been out for a few hours. I like the second track really. It's probably my favourite, Teleharmonic. That is followed up by Wall of Eyes, the title track. And the third one I'm really liking is kind of a toss-up between Friend of a Friend, which I just think is an absolute cracker of a song, and I Quit, which is a really... some reviewers weren't kind of saying it wasn't that great a song, kind of giving it 3.5 out of 5, but I think it's absolutely fantastic, mate. What are you loving so far, and what do you think you might love more down the track? Because I think it's going to be a bit of a grower, this album.
I think so. Look, I didn't mind I Quit as well. I thought that was pretty good, but I had a similar top 3. I think my favourite one was Wall of Eyes. It sounds like House of Cards of In Rainbows, and that's not a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing at all, but it gave me that In Rainbows type of vibe, that first one. Second one, I liked Friend of a Friend. It did remind me of the Pyramid Song in some ways. I think that the imagery in terms of what Yorke is singing about, it actually reminded me of Paul McCartney around about those Revolver style days when he was starting to sort of branch out. And number 3, Under Our Pillows, I thought it was interesting. It was an interesting style. It sort of starts out in a very similar manner to some of the stuff that came out in the very first album, but it ends up going to sort of some type of a psychedelic freak out, very similar to the stuff that I'd listened to in The Piper of the Gates of Dawn by Pink Floyd, that very first album in 1967. I know you haven't listened to that album, but that's certainly one that has always been one of my favourites. Let me know in the comments about that. I don't know if I've got that on the money, but it just reminded me of just how that sort of all progressed. But again, it has the Thom Yorke and the Johnny Greenwood DNA, which again is great.
Oh, absolutely, mate. And I think to kind of sum up my kind of stance on this album, it's not too often that bands are releasing albums which you actually really have to sit down and listen to from start to finish to really appreciate. I mean, there are obviously singles that have been released, but what I like about this is, and we'll talk about it before, you know, this is the kind of album that you sit down with, you know, if you've got a nice hi-fi system, little glass of whiskey, and you dedicate an hour to listen to it from start to finish. And I think it's really courageous and really fantastic that bands are really aiming to kind of do that when we live in a world of, you know, YouTube shorts and, you know, instant gratification. To be able to do that, I think it's fantastic, mate. Do you have any final words on what to say?
Yeah, look, I'm going to give this one 4.5 stars. So, I think overall it's a good start. I think albums sometimes can either grow on you or you can get sick of it. So I think that there's plenty of albums that I've come out of the blocks and given a high rating, and then you feel like you don't listen to it. On the flip side, the opposite happens. I've got a feeling this will grow on me. So I know it's 4.5 now. It could actually end up being a 5-star album. I'd say that it's probably going to be a contender for album of the year in some critics list. Let's just see how it happens. I'll be interested to see how a lot of the critics actually see it. I could see them going a couple of ways with it. I think that the looseness of the first album and the vibe of the first album isn't quite there.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's just definitely a part 2, a chapter 2 for The Smile for me. I know you said 5 stars, but have you got anything else to add?
Yeah, no, it's 5 stars for me. I mean, I think the use of strings on some particular songs on this album is just sensational, as well as the drums with Tom Skinner. I think he brings something new to the sound as well, moving away from Radiohead. So it's a 5 stars from me, mate. And that is our initial take of the new album from The Smile, Wall of Ice.